Okay, so just extending a little bit deeper into the file manager's objectives. Well, one of those critical components is file access. Okay, so and we just so we would say the file access. Okay, and we understand file access has to enable us to be able to create a file or create some piece of data and then store this on an operating system in some kind of secondary storage. And then we should be able to, in a multi-user system, allow certain people access that file simultaneously, right? So we would say that file sharing implies files are accessible to users other than the owner of the particular file, right? So the main issues that we would have here, or the issues involved with given this particular type of access, are the access rights. So how do we define them? And the management of simultaneous access. Yeah. Okay, so we want many users to access our file at the same time. So the file manager has to do this, okay? So when files are to be shared, we need to be able to specify which users are allowed access to files and what kind of permissions are there, right? So we consider the particular file. Well, we need to know, well, first of all, who's allowed to use it, or who, and we need to see what they can do, yeah? Okay, and we want to be able to have a kind of a one-to-many relationship. And so the file manager allows an owner to specify what type of access is permitted, right? And essentially what we need to, I suppose, be able to define it is some kind of what we would call a protection mask, yeah? So we say this info is, I suppose, achieved, or we can say defined by a protection mask. And the protection mask actually enables us to be able to say, well, who's able to look at their file and what they can actually do with their particular file. So, but we have this is broken down, right? So we would have different user classes are defined, yeah. So are defined within the file manager. So we would have the owner, and he is referred to as O. We would have, I suppose, group members. So you can be members of a particular group. And they're defined by G. And then others, or the rest of the world, defined by W. And now you have different access privileges, right? So these are the access classes, and then the privileges, right? So, or the access privileges are then defined to be able to say, well, what these individuals or groups can actually do with your file. We say access privileges associated with a file. And these can be broken down again into, I suppose, different categories. So we have none is, we can have none where the user may not know of the existence of the file. The user is not allowed to read the user directory that includes the file. So it's essentially hidden to that for that particular user. We have the read access. So the user can actually see the file, they can read it for any purpose. The user can write to the file, defined by W, or the user can execute the file. So with the write, well, the user can modify, delete, and add to the file's data. With execute, the user can load and execute a program but cannot copy it. Okay, so these are the different, what we would call the access privileges. So we start off and we say the critical thing here is that we need to have some kind of file. This file has to be shared with a particular person or groups, and we need to be able to see what they can actually do with it. This info then is achieved or defined in some kind of protection mask, right? This is what is called a protection mask. So then we break this down further and we then say, well, okay, so we have a protection mask, but we've got two main things, right? So first is the who, and then what can they do, right? So the who bit then identifies the different classes that are defined within the file manager or the user classes. So here we have three different classes identified between the owner, different group members, or others, or the rest of the world. And then we have on the other side of it, we have this idea of the access privileges. And the access privileges associated with a file are none, so they don't know the existence of the file. They have a read access to it, or a write access to it, or the execute access to it. Now, one of the key things when you start developing, I suppose, lots of other applications in your programming modules, and when you're automatically writing files and you're automatically doing stuff, you need to be quite aware of these different access privileges, because you get a default access privileges, and then you may not be able to do certain things programmatically. So it's quite an important, I suppose, aspect of files and file access to be quite familiar with. So let me just make a little bit of room here so we have a little example of what this might look like. So we understand that we have these different groups. We understand that we have, I guess, these different access privileges. But then what we could say is that we could have a very simple example. When a new file is created, well then we would have some kind of mask associated with it, right? And that mask could be defined as where we have the owner has read, write, and execute privileges. Then a certain group could have just read, and then the rest of the world might also have read. So what we have down here is we would have the owner can read, write, and execute. The group and the world can both read but not write or execute. So, I mean, we can see here that by having this kind of mask, right, and it's a very important aspect here, is we define the privileges associated with how people can see, they can view, they can read, they can write or execute a particular file that has been created. Now, again, one of the most important things when you're looking at the file access and file access rights, and in particular the mask associated with this particular file that's been created, it comes up quite a lot when you're automatically generating files in your programming modules, that you need to be quite aware that this mask exists, and if you don't handle this mask properly, you will run into troubles programmatically when you're trying to automatically store this information somewhere. Okay, I hope that helps understand this idea of how the file management system is able to deal with this idea of allowing you to create files and then share those files across multiple users in a multi-user system. Okay, thanks.